Hey everybody, what's going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. So, this most recent event, the Monster Type Festival, has definitely caused quite a bit of a stir online from what I've seen people talking about it. The opinions on it seem to be pretty unanimous, and they are not great. And I find myself siding with a lot of other people on this one. As far as this festival goes, I even had a video within the past couple of months, I believe it was, where I was kind of deriding Master Duel festivals, like, overall, you know, like, I tend to not think they're super great a lot of the time in terms of, like, you know, shaking up the deck building and gameplay process in a meaningful way. And I definitely have to admit that the Monster Type Festival is probably the worst that we've seen so far. I think this is by far the worst one, and also so clearly just to promote, like, the most recent, you know, selection pack. In particular, you know, you look at the loner decks, and there is one obviously best one, and you're going to be seeing this deck quite a bit going back through my replays and looking at all the people I had played against. People on exactly this Labyrinth loner deck did seem to make up the vast majority of the matchups there. So regardless of whether you're playing against a loner or a self-built iteration, Labyrinth is definitely the go-to deck for this meta, and it's pretty obvious, you know, that Konami knew that, and again, I think it's pretty obvious that this was pretty clearly intended to push the new selection pack, which I think is pretty uncool. I think if we're going to have festivals, they should be, you know, fun. They should be events, as opposed to just kind of slogs, which this one definitely was, in my opinion. So, I'm going to go ahead and show off the deck that I played, and we'll take a look at some gameplay here as well. So I ultimately ended up settling on Dark World Despia, specifically a going second iteration. Actually, over on Patreon, it's funny, on Patreon I actually have an exclusive video over there where I was telling my patrons that, I don't think I'm going to make a video for the festival, but after switching gears rather over to this deck, I did decide to ultimately make a video for two reasons. One, because honestly, despite having a lot of success once focusing my build specifically on going second, it honestly did still kind of frustrate me, just the overall state of this festival. Like, here's the thing. You all know that I value deck diversity a lot. It's my favorite part of Yu-Gi-Oh! I love playing a lot of different decks, so when the meta kind of becomes centralized around one deck, I tend not to have as much fun. There was Tier 0, but I think this is, like, as far as at least how centralized around one deck a format can be, this is definitely far worse than Tier 0 as far as this particular festival goes, being centered around Labyrinth. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that at least at the bare minimum, 80% of my matchups have been Labyrinth, and it's just not fun. Like, I don't know, here's the thing too, like, I don't really like playing back row mirrors, so I don't feel particularly incentivized to play with Labyrinth in this meta when everyone else is already playing it. I don't want to play, again, lab mirrors, so I decided to try out Dark World Despia. Despia as an archetype, even though we don't have Albaz or really any of its support, or access to that here. Despias are all fiends and fairies, so we do have at least access to those, like the 3 Tragedy, we have 2 Aluber, and then we have I threw in the Dramaturge as well. I had Libidum, but just didn't really seem like there was a whole lot of good use for it. We can also still make use of the Frightfur package because the Edge Imp Chain is a fiend. To kind of help round out the list and add a bit of extra fusion-based support, I've included the Dark World package. We're using 1 Fusion Grapha, 1 main deck Grapha, 2 Reign-Beaux, and then 3 of each Genta and Snoww, alongside the 3 Gates of the Dark World and 1 Dark World Ascension there. That's kind of the Dark World package that I've got. And as far as our specifically going second cards that we're playing against all of the Labyrinth decks, I of course have the Red Reboots. I did already have these crafted from my time playing in the MCS. I actually included these in my Math Mech deck that I got top 8 with way back in, when would that have been, February, during week 2. So I did not craft these just for this event, or even just for this format. I have not been playing Red Reboot on regular ladder. I don't think it's good, honestly. However, here in the event ladder, where again, about 80% of your matchups are going to be Labyrinth, Red Reboot I think is definitely main deck worthy. I've also included a set of evenly matched, again because we are always going to be going second. I have those, as well as a couple of copies of Lightning Storm. We also have a Harpie's Feather Duster, and then I also threw in 3 Super Polymerization. It's true that we don't have any of the relatively generic targets for it, like Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, Garura, Wings of Restored Life, Mud Dragon of the Swamp. None of those are in here. However, pretty much all of the Despia fusions are just a Despia monster plus some amount of light and dark monsters, and of course with Lab being on dark, all it really takes is for you to just get any Despia monster into play, and then your Super Polys are live to go into the Masquerade. Masquerade is the main card that we're going to be going into here in this iteration. The Tax Dragon's going to come down and help us win games there. Ideally, if I had 3 copies, I would absolutely be jamming 3 Masquerade here, but I only have 2, and again, I'm not really in the business of crafting URs specifically for one event, especially not one like this, so I ultimately decided to just stick with the 2 copies, and I found that to be enough. I found that that was enough to get me through the event. This is the 20th here, so it's about 2.5 days at the time of the event, and I'm pretty much all caught up on the missions. There are going to be, as there pretty much always are, additional missions, but the only thing I really have to do left now is just play in duels, and I can just do that when I get the additional missions, which I honestly plan on doing with probably just some kind of like self-TK style deck, just to get it over with quickly. I normally don't do that even for events, but again, I'm just really not feeling this festival at all, so as far as a lot of the fusion monsters in the extra deck, those are super poly targets for some of the more quote-unquote rogue decks in this meta. I will say the Frightfur Daredevil isn't necessary. I actually did mean to take that out and slot in a Dugaress. I actually meant to do that like halfway through my run, but ultimately I just forgot to. But it didn't really come up either way, so it was fine. But yeah, we have, like, you know, if we face DDDs, we can super poly 2 of their cards into Oracle King Dark. If we face the Punder Patrols, we can super poly 2 of theirs into the Lys. And if we face against Fluffles, we can fuse their Edge Imp and Fluffle into a Cruel Whale. So, again, just a few targets there. As far as the extra deck goes to the Link monsters, I don't think Unchained A-Bomb is the way to go here. I definitely would have rather had a Muckraker in a couple of situations, so I think ideally that would be slotted into there as well, but ultimately that's just going to be it for that. So I think I've pretty much already ended up listing out every card in the main and extra deck just by talking about them. Let's just go ahead and move now to the gameplay, and I'll show you some of those games. So, surprise, surprise, our first opponent is going to be on exactly the Labyrinth Loner. Now, again, like I said, I am playing specifically a going second build, so all these games, I believe, should be going second. There were a couple of times I actually played against another going second deck that made me go first, but I don't think any of those actually end up making the replays. We'll have to see. So, in any case, we have a pretty decent hand here. We have Genta, and, you know, another Genta isn't the ideal fiend to discard. I would have rather had like a Snoww or a Reign-Beaux or even an Edge Imp Chain. That's actually one really nice thing about this deck, is that there's a lot of little synergies, like the fact that Gates can discard Edge Imp Chain and then trigger to add the Frightfur Patchwork, or another thing you can do is Branded Opening. The discard off that is in effect not a cost, so that does actually trigger Dark World effects, which all that is very, very nice. So I'd like to have a different fiend other than another Genta here, but we do end up drawing that in the form of Snoww, so we have a good discard target for the Gates here. Even though I have a Gates in hand, I'm still going to go ahead and discard Genta, just see if I can provoke any kind of a reaction on my opponent. They are going to fire off the Cuckoo Clock and the Backjack. I did think it was a bit odd that my opponent was, you know, going to end without any back rows, but it seems that they were in fact looking to set up the big welcome just on top of their deck, and then they, again, activating with the Cuckoo Clock here. Gonna go ahead and fire off the Gates. Gates is gonna pitch Snoww, drawing another Red Reboot. As far as using Red Reboot, you do actually have to be mindful of it, even in a meta like this, because, like, activating a Red Reboot against your Labyrinth opponent doesn't necessarily mean you auto-win, right? If you can't end the duel on the turn you activate Red Reboot, then your opponent not only gets to use the trap card you negated again, but on top of that, they get to use whatever else you set. So you either have to end the duel that turn, or have the means to remove those back rows. Now, in a format like this, even with a deck like this, it's not always feasible to OTK. It's feasible enough at the time. Like, typically a lot of Despia lines will lead you to, like, Masquerade plus Dramaturge, and then if you have like a Super Poly or some other fusion effect, you can just pretty easily make another Masquerade for lethal. However, in this case, we don't really have access to too much of our branded engine, so we're not going to be ending the duel on this turn. However, as you can see, we did pop their big Welcome Labyrinth with the Grapha. I'm actually not going to add another copy of Edge Imp Chain when I battle with this one, because I only play 2, and I want to make sure that I can activate this Frightfur Patchwork that I'm about to search off of the Edge Imp Chain here. I will, however, link off into Nightmare Phoenix This won't trigger any of the Dark World's effects, but I'll just pitch Genta. That doesn't have a discard effect anyway. Blowing up the compulsory in my opponent's set, and like I said, adding a Patchwork. I will go ahead and activate that now for not only a little bit more deck thinning, but as you can see, I have the Dramaturge in hand, so I can actually poly that Edge Imp Chain with the Dramaturge to not only summon the Masquerade, but also that Dramaturge as well. Setting Brained in Red and Red Reboot. Following that, I'm sure here in a moment we'll, go ahead and end our turn here. So that's kind of the, I guess, sort of play pattern that I built this deck for, was to, again, just make sure that we're using anti-back row cards / going second cards to, just kind of lock our lab opponent out of the game there. Also, like, I don't know, it feels like if you're not playing lab, trying to go first, like, it's weird to say because usually against a back row deck you'd think, oh, you would want to go first, right? But it's hard to tech against back row decks and also, like, consistently want to go first, because a lot of teching against back row decks is going to be stuff like Harpie's Feathered Duster and Lightning Storm that can't really be activated on turn one. You have to do it, when your opponent does sets their back row on their turn there. So it definitely seems like every deck in this format, I mean, myself included, to be totally honest, is either Labyrinth or Anti-Labyrinth. This time we're going to be up against an anti-lab deck. They're going to be on Trickstars. They're main decking 3 Consecrated Light, which for those who don't know is an Edison format staple. I remember side decking back in the day. It's a light monster that says basically your opponent can't summon or attack with dark monsters. Alright, looks like they are going to get a couple of Trickstar tokens here. Trickstars, of course, being the deck notoriously known for dealing little instances of damage a lot, and then using that in order to not only do enough burn over time for lethal, but also power up their monsters and activate various other effects. The Holly Angel here in particular is going to gain attack equal to the total amount that my opponent ends up burning me for. The Dugaress here is going to burn me for 200 points of damage every single time I add a card from deck to hand. Also note that this is a continuous condition type effect, not an activated effect. The Holly Angel is an activated effect and is a mandatory one. It is actually not optional. That is going to matter quite a lot in this duel, as, Trickstars, they might be known for dealing instances of burn damage very frequently, but they are definitely not the only ones here. It's really only going to take me fusing for 1 Masquerade, and now, every time my opponent's Trickstar Dugaress activates to burn me, their Holly Angel is also going to activate, and that will cause them to take damage from the Masquerade. Again, they're not taking damage from the Dugaress activation because this is a continuous effect that's being applied. This is an activated effect, the Holly Angel. The way to note that is by the use of the colon here. A colon indicates a condition, semicolon indicates a cost, both indicate activated effects. If it's all one sentence like this, it's a continuous effect that is not considered to actually be activated. A bit confusing, but it's something that ultimately just comes with time, just I guess knowing things like this. Just knowing what to watch for in the rules text, really. But yeah, at this point, I mean, I don't really have any issues with continuing to add cards to my hand, because every time my opponent tries to burn me for it for 200, I just get to burn them for 600. And it's actually really funny because I remember seeing, I think it was on, like, Reddit somewhere, like, or maybe it was like a Discord comment on, like, the Master Duel Discord, but I saw Trickstars being discussed, and someone was saying, like, it's sad, Masquerade kind of does what Trickstars do, but better. And Masquerade isn't even, like, a branded Despia deck, like, on Ranked Ladder. Making Masquerade is like they're playing, like, C or D at this point. It's not even the second or third often thing they tried to do. So it's kind of sad that, this whole archetype Trickstar is really just a worse version of what a better deck doesn't even really bother to do. I mean, that's kind of the pessimist way to view it. Of course, Trickstar, I mean, if you want to do well with Trickstar, if you want to play it competitively, it would take a very dedicated pilot, and also, I would think a very teched out build against the meta. I don't know much about Trickstar, I'm just kind of guessing that based on the fact that the archetype doesn't see a lot of success, but that doesn't mean it's impossible to, like, reach Master with it or anything like that. In this case, though, as you can see, like, yeah, I may be getting burned, but my opponent's getting burned at a much quicker rate, and at this point, they have just ultimately decided to concede and give me the win. To be fair, though, I don't know off the top of my head how I was planning on getting rid of the Holly Angel. It's definitely too big for me to battle over, and the Grapha ended up getting stopped by the Graveyard Protection effect of one of their spell cards. I think I could have maybe recycled the Grapha, but I'm not 100% sure. But in any case, let's go and take a look at our next game here. Here we are going to once again be playing against another anti-Labyrinth deck. This one's going to be Vernu Selves, a pure Vernu Self deck. So not even really playing, I think it might have been playing the exchange of the spirit cards, like Kelbeck and Agido and all those, but I think other than that, not really, you know, any other Earth archetypes outside of just the Vernu Selves. I say this is another anti-lab deck because my opponent is on Lightning Storms, which makes sense why they made me go first. Hey, there was a game actually where I go first here. They're on Lightning Storms, they're on Hey Trunades, they're on a Harpie's Feather Duster. I don't remember seeing any Evenlies though, which is kind of interesting, but yeah, being on Lightning Storms, again, it makes sense. They'd want me to go first here. And as you can see, I've got a Lightning Storm and a Red Reboot of my own, so I definitely would have preferred to go second. But, okay, yeah, here comes the Kelbeck now to bounce my Genta, which is actually a little annoying because now I don't get to summon the Reign-Beaux by bouncing the Genta, but it's completely fine. Got another Gates, so I don't even need to discard the Genta just yet. I can banish the Reign-Beaux and actually discard the Edge Imp Chain. This is a little interaction I talked about before earlier. Now that allows me to add the Patchwork, and Patchwork F will allow me to add a Poly and yet another Edge Imp Chain. Gonna go ahead and fire off that Polymerization now, fusing the Grapha and Genta in my hand in order to summon the Fusion Grapha, Dragon Overlord of the Dark World, to set up an Omni-Negate, setting the Red Reboot along with the Super Poly here before passing back over to my opponent. They're going to start off with the Quacky Ducky, the Vernu Self, the Missing Seedlings here. I'm actually going to go ahead and fire off the Grapha effect, just in case this is the only Vernu Self effect my opponent's able to really get off here. So, interestingly, as I go to activate Edge Imp Chain, my opponent is going to opt to use Keldo to shuffle back the Edge Imp Chain, which definitely does not stop it from resolving, and is actually detrimental to my opponent because before that, I actually didn't have a means to activate this Patchwork. I'd already used both copies of Edge Imp Chain in my deck, but since they put another copy back, now I can activate Patchwork on my turn with no problem. Opponent is going to ultimately end up summoning Triss Hierarchia. This is going to allow them to get rid of my Fusion Grapha because I already used the effect this turn, before passing over to me. So I get to use the Frightfur Patchwork here to add Polymerization and the Edge Imp Chain, but unfortunately I don't really have a way of using Super Poly with this Hierarchia until I get a Despia card. By using the Gates though, however, I'm able to draw a branded opening by discarding the Edge Imp Chain, and I get to even bring back my Genta as a nice fun little side result too. Alright, let's go ahead and activate the Despia effect here, the Theater of the Branded. This will allow me to fusion summon the Masquerade. Don't even need to use a Super Poly now, I can just battle over my opponent's Triss Hierarchia with no issue whatsoever. Unfortunately for me though, their last card is going to be an Evenly. I'm just going to go ahead and keep my own Masquerade before setting my own Evenly and then passing back over to my opponent here. So they're in top deck mode, but they managed to peel Extravagance off the top of their deck. That sucks. Drawing 2. Now, of course, they have a Lightning Storm. They're going to use that to blow up my monsters, or at least try to, but Branded Opening is going to protect the Masquerade. So even though my opponent got a couple of pretty good top decks, it doesn't seem like they're ultimately going to be able to save my opponent here. The Reign-Beaux off the top doesn't really do a lot for me given this board state, so I'll just battle with Masquerade before passing back over to my opponent, who is going to activate the Vernu Self Corolla. This will allow them to in turn activate the leftover Vernu Self card in their hand, the Thawing Winter. But even as I go to summon that as well as the Missing Seedlings, that's not enough with however many life points they have left to get over my Masquerade, as they're rapidly running out of the ability to activate any effect. And of course I get to pretty freely battle for lethal on my turn coming up here. So we do still have one more game, let's go straight into it. And the final duel is actually going to be the same deck we played against at the start. Is going to be Labyrinth, and exactly the Labyrinth Loner deck. Going to be going second as we hope to here this time around. Our opening hand here, this actually would have been a great going first hand to be totally honest, but still great going second with a hand like this either way. Definitely looking to top deck Feather Duster evenly. Reboot, just any of those anti-back row cards, as our opponent's going to end on set 3 and pass. No anti-back row cards here, but again, our hand is honestly fine as it is, so as I discard Genta, opponent's going to activate Welcome Labyrinth. I don't really have the ability to respond, but I do have the ability to add this Gates to hand, and then normal summon the Despia Tragedy. Normal summoning the Tragedy might seem a little bit weird, but it's going to make my Super Poly live. Now, if my opponent goes to activate a trap card, I can chain Super Poly, like this compulsory. They won't get to set a back row now with the Lady Labyrinth, and they also won't get to activate anything else in this chain link either, which is very nice. So fusing my Tragedy with their Lady, that's going to allow me to summon the Masquerade here. Genta's effect will resolve, summoning it to the field, as will the Edge Imp Chain effect to add the Patchwork. Tragedy's effect also gets to activate, which will allow me to add Dramaturge. Now, it shouldn't be too difficult here to find lethal, just going to activate that Patchwork, adding the Poly and the Edge Imp Chain. Polymerization is going to come down now and fuse the Dramaturge with the Grapha in order to summon the Fusion Grapha. This will put up a sort of Omni-Negate for my opponent's last back row here in case it's the Mirror Force. So, Dramaturge will summon itself, I'll bounce Genta to summon the Reign-Beaux, and it doesn't in fact end up being the Storming Mirror Force, but thankfully, as I mentioned, I can just use Grapha's effect to change the effect into discard a card, which I will gladly do. Attack continues as Grapha, Reign-Beaux, and finally Dramaturge are able to swing in for lethal there. So hopefully this helped. I experienced a pretty good amount of success with this build. I definitely, even if you don't use exactly Dark World Despia like I did, I definitely advise gearing whatever you're playing to go second and play a bunch of back row hate in this, honestly, one deck meta. But thank you all for watching, especially all the way in. I really appreciate it. Let's just go ahead and move now to our outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best way to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack. You'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, it's not just a pure donation, you do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now, so without further ado, this is Xlex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.